Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. Thank you as always, for joining us. A lot of important work going on this week over at Judicial Watch. We have a new lawsuit on the shooting death of Ashli Babbitt, an historic lawsuit. I'll talk about that. Plus, we have a new lawsuit targeting the Biden censorship agency's targeting of Judicial Watch. Plus, there are new developments in the abuses of Trump and the effort to hold Joe Biden accountable and his corrupt family accountable to the rule of law. First up, though, is this major new lawsuit that Judicial Watch filed on behalf of Ashli Babbitt's husband, Aaron, and her estate, a $30 million wrongful death lawsuit against the United States government. It was filed today. The anniversary of January 6th is this weekend, and it is a historic lawsuit, and it's a long time coming, and we're honored to be able to represent Mr. Babbitt and Ashli's estate in order to get justice and accountability and the truth out about what happened that day. An outrageous, inexcusable shooting death of Ashli. There's pictures of Ashli with her husband, Aaron, 14-year Air Force veteran. She and Aaron owned a pool cleaning business together. And, she came to Washington because she wanted to support President Trump, participate in that rally. She traveled here alone, and she was shot for no good reason by Lieutenant Michael Byrd of the United States Capitol Police. The lawsuit was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California, so it was filed out in San Diego. And as I said, it was filed on behalf of the family of Ashli Babbitt, who is the, as I said, the U.S. Air Force veteran shot that day on January 6th. And I'll say it once. If I won't say it again, I will. Let's put it. I'll say it once, and then I'll say it again. That's what I mean to say. Ashli Babbitt was the only homicide victim that day at the January 6th disturbance, and the left media and the politicians pushing a January 6th narrative that's anti-Trump and anti-Trump supporter in order to justify their abuses of law. Don't want you to know that, but that's the darn truth. And we want the government to be held accountable for what its employee did. The lawsuit includes claims against the United States government for wrongful death, assault and battery, and various negligence issues. Babbitt was a 35-year-old Air Force veteran, a resident of San Diego, where she owned and operated a successful pool business with her husband, Aaron. Ashli traveled alone from San Diego to Washington, D.C. to attend the Women for America First rally on January 6th at the Ellipse. Ashli loved her country, as the lawsuit details, and wanted to show her support for President Trump's America First policies and to see and hear the president speak live while he remained in office. Ashli did not go to Washington as part of a group or for any unlawful or nefarious purpose. She was there to exercise what she believed were her God-given American liberties and freedoms. After the rally, Ashli, like great many other patriotic Americans attending the rally, walked to the Capitol peacefully, a distance of about 1.5 miles. Two undercover Metropolitan Police Department officers followed close behind Ashli as she climbed the stairs to the West Terrace. Ashli entered the Capitol on the Senate side long after others had done so. Once inside, Ashli encountered a female Capitol Police officer who directed her to walk south towards the House side. Ashli complied, walking alone through the Capitol and ultimately arriving at the hallway outside the main door to the House chamber where demonstrators had gathered. From there, Ashli walked by herself east along the hallway outside the House chamber, then turned south, reaching the hallway outside the Speaker's lobby at the southeast corner of the Capitol. The shooting occurred at the east entrance to the Speaker's lobby, and I think in the lawsuit itself, I think we have a copy of there's a photo of the Speaker's lobby area where Ashli was killed. And maybe the guys can pull that up while I'm reading. After demonstrators filled the hallway outside the lobby, two individuals in the crowded, tightly packed hallway struck and dislodged the glass panels in the lobby doors and the right door side light. Lieutenant Byrd, who is a United States Capitol Police commander and was incident commander for the House on January 6, 2021, so he was a senior guy, shot Ashli on sight as she raised herself up into the opening of the right door side light. Byrd later confessed that he shot Ashli before seeing her hands or assessing her intentions or even identifying her as a female. Ashli was unarmed. Her hands were up in the air, empty, and in plain view of Lieutenant Byrd and other officers in the lobby. The facts speak truth. Ashli was ambushed when she was shot by Lieutenant Byrd. Multiple witnesses at the scene yelled, "You just murdered her." Lieutenant Byrd was never charged or otherwise punished or disciplined for Ashli's homicide. The lawsuit further states Lieutenant Byrd, who is a United States Capitol Police commander and was the incident commander, as I said, for the House on January 6th, shot Ashli as she raised herself up into the opening of the right door side light. Not one member of Congress was in the lobby, which was guarded by multiple armed police officers. Additional armed police officers were in the hallway outside the lobby and or the adjoining stairway. Ashli could not have seen Lieutenant Byrd, who was positioned far to Ashli's left and on the opposite side of the doors near an opening to the retiring room at a distance of approximately 15 feet at an angle of approximately 160 degrees. Sergeant Timothy Lively, one of the armed officers guarding the lobby doors from the hallway, later told officials investigating the shooting, "I saw him. There was no way that that woman would have seen that." Lieutenant Byrd, who was not in uniform, did not identify himself as a police officer or otherwise make his presence known to Ashli. Lieutenant Byrd did not give Ashli any warnings or commands before shooting her dead. Ashli remained conscious for minutes or longer after being shot by Lieutenant Byrd. Ashli experienced extreme pain, suffering, mental anguish, and intense fear before slipping into preterminal unconsciousness. The autopsy report identified the cause of death as, quote, a gunshot wound to left anterior shoulder, unquote, with onset interval of minutes. The fact that Ashli was alive and conscious in extreme pain and suffering is documented in videos of the shooting. Furthermore, nothing about the wound track described in the autopsy report would be expected to result in immediate death or instantaneous loss of consciousness, and Ashli's lungs contained blood, further confirming that she was alive and breathing after being shot. Ashli was pronounced dead at Washington Hospital Center at 3:15. The medical examiner determined that the manner of death was homicide. So this is an important lawsuit. And it's important because an American citizen, Ashli Babbitt, was shot and killed in a way that was unlawful, improper, by a United States Capitol Police officer, the official police force of Congress. And January 6th, obviously, the left is using, so these are some photos we have in the complaint of the area around where the shooting took place. The January 6th, I guess President Biden is going to use January 6th as an excuse to justify his effort to jail his political enemies this weekend. It's been used as a leverage, a fulcrum, to leverage attacks on the political opponents of the left. And Ashli Babbitt's shooting death is an inconvenient truth in that regard. What the facts show there, that she was unlawfully killed and that there was no accountability for Lieutenant Byrd or anyone else who is responsible for what happened that day in terms of managing and training and supervising the police on site there. And the left media and partisans have sought to downplay Ashli's death, suggest that she had it coming, and other smears and vicious comments that would never be used to justify the shooting death in similar circumstances of any other American citizen. I mean, there isn't a police officer who's honest in the land who would look at what happened to Ashli that day. And you've seen the video of the shooting death, and if you haven't, you can go look it up quickly. Unjustified, completely unjustified. Now, the Justice Department refused to pursue criminal charges against Lieutenant Byrd, though in their conclusion, I don't think they said the shooting was justified. They just said that they didn't have enough to charge him, or that's what they told us. Whether I believe it or not is another matter, given the politics of the situation, as I've disclosed. And then on top of that, administratively, he was investigated by the Capitol Police, and they did nothing too. So no accountability. And this lawsuit is designed to provide accountability and a more full understanding of the truth of what happened on January 6th. And one of the big issues is the conduct of Lieutenant Byrd. That was an out-of-control situation that he created, popping out and shooting Ashli like he did. And as the lawsuit describes, Lieutenant Byrd's employer, namely the Capitol Police Board, ultimately Congress, obviously the U.S. Capitol Police, knew or should have known that Lieutenant Byrd was prone to behave in a dangerous or otherwise incompetent manner. And we make the following allegations in this lawsuit. Less than 2 years before January 6, 2021, on or about February 25, 2019, Byrd left his loaded Glock 22, the same firearm he used to shoot and kill Ashli Babbitt, in a bathroom in the Capitol Visitor Center complex. Now, the Capitol Visitor Center complex is, if you've ever visited the Capitol, you got the big Capitol, right? And in front of it on the east side of the Capitol is a giant plaza. And what they've done at great taxpayer expense is they, on that plaza facing the Capitol, underground, there's this huge visitor center where tourists enter for tours before they go up into the Capitol. There are meeting rooms and conference facilities such down there as well. So thousands of people go through that facility every day. And he left it in a bathroom there. The loaded Glock was discovered during a routine security sweep later that same day. I mean, I wonder how many hours he didn't have his gun without knowing it. I'd like to know that little detail. Approximately 15,000 to 20,000 people pass through the Capitol Visitor Center, which serves as the main entrance for visitors to the U.S. Capitol during peak season. Lawmakers and staff charged with oversight at the Capitol Police were not made aware of the incident until contacted by a reporter. So this happened, and none of the leadership knew that this serious incident had happened? Unbelievable. His police powers had been revoked on more than one occasion prior to January 6, 2021 for failing to meet or complete semi-annual firearms qualification requirements. Imagine that. I mean, again, if there are law enforcement watching this, or former law enforcement, or folks who are generally aware of the requirements for law enforcement training, I appreciate your responses to what I'm disclosing here, because I think, and I think other viewers would appreciate it too, because it's really difficult to overstate how outrageous it was that Byrd was allowed to continue his duties given these issues. And it gets worse. In fact, Byrd had a reputation among peers for not being a good shot. Under the USCP's range management system, the Capitol Police's range management system, an officer who fails to meet who fails to meet firearm qualification requirements is given 1 week of remedial training. If the officer still fails to qualify after remedial training, police powers are then revoked until the officer qualifies. His police powers were also revoked for a prior off-duty shooting into a stolen moving vehicle in which the occupants were teenagers or juveniles. The stolen vehicle was Lieutenant Byrd's car. Bird fired multiple shots at the fleeing vehicle in a suburban area. Stray bullets from Bird's firearms struck the sides of homes nearby. An official investigation found that Lieutenant Bird's use of force was not justified. What was going on that he was allowed to continue, as I said, in his duties, which involved protecting the U.S. Capitol and the visitors to the Capitol? We're seeking, Judicial Watch details in its complaint that plaintiffs seek the full and just amount of $30 million plus costs and interest according to law, and any and all further relief to which plaintiffs may be justly entitled. As I said, it was filed out in San Diego, and I think the government has 60 days to respond. The lawsuit was filed by our lawyers out there. Robert Stick worked on it. I think he's the lead lawyer in the case, and obviously our team here in Washington, D.C. as well. But it's an important lawsuit in the sense that the government's finally going to be held accountable here, and no one else in Congress was willing to look seriously at what Byrd did. Republicans have been controlling the House for a year, and they haven't done jack on holding Lieutenant Byrd accountable. Haven't done anything. And, as I said, we're honored. Let me read what I said in the complaint here, in the press release. The only homicide on January 6th was the unlawful shooting death of Ashli Babbitt. Her homicide by Lieutenant Byrd is a scandal beyond belief. This historic lawsuit seeks a measure of justice and government accountability for Ashli's wrongful death. Judicial Watch and our supporters are honored to represent Ashli's steadfast widower, Aaron Babbitt, and her estate in this legal action. Ashli was shot in cold blood, and the rule of law requires justice for her. And I'm also, and I know her mother, Mickey, is a regular now here in Washington, D.C. I see her all over town. And I met her, I think there's a picture of her and me I put in Twitter just recently, guys, if you want to show. And she's been out trying to get justice for her daughter as well. So, pray for her mom as well, Ashli's mom. And we're just so honored to bring this claim for her. And we've been very much interested in January 6th for the reasons I stated. January 6th was there's a picture of me with Ashli's mother at CPAC last year. She's a wonderful woman. And, and I've looked at the videos time and time again, and obviously more repeatedly recently. And I frankly, just speaking as Tom Fitton, I just can't believe they shot her. I can't believe that police officer shot her. I mean, when you look at the video, I encourage you to look at the video again. At the fact that nothing had been done in terms of accountability for that obviously bad shooting, that unlawful shooting, is just beyond belief. And every police officer you have all these police officers dying in the line of duty, putting their lives on the line, doing all this wonderful work to protect the public safety, and this one officer engages in this misconduct, and he gets away with it to date. And I wanted to just go into a little bit more in the lawsuit. Here's the lawsuit. This is what the lawsuit looks like. You probably can't see because it's all white, and I'll show you up close what it looks like. There you go. No, you really can't see anything, can you? Estate of Ashli Babbitt and Aaron Babbitt, individually and on behalf of the estate of Ashli Babbitt, plaintiffs versus the United States of America. Complaint for assault and battery, negligence, negligent supervision, discipline and retention, negligent training, survival, and wrongful death. So it's a survival action, right? The survivor can sue in circumstances as we're describing. So in the lawsuit, we go into detail, and I encourage you to read the lawsuit completely because it will explain just how off the Byrd killing of Babbitt was and how unjustified it was. Because you know, when you're filing a lawsuit like this, that issue is going to be, what are the general training requirements, certainly for the police agency here, you know, what the law allows, what discretion police officers have, et cetera, et cetera. And we describe just how awful that shooting was with some detail that I think is quite powerful. When Lieutenant Byrd shot and killed Ashli, he breached multiple applicable standards of care governing A, the safe use of a firearm, the perception and assessment of imminent threats, use of force levels and escalation, de-escalation of force, the perception and assessment of relevant facts, the use of warnings, firing backdrops. Think literally, what is the backdrop, what he was firing into? A crowd of people, including other police officers, and obtaining timely, appropriate medical aid, among other breaches to be identified through discovery. Had Lieutenant Byrd adhered to these standards, he would not have fired, and Ashli would be alive today. And we describe his negligent use of the firearm, or we allege it here. Lieutenant Byrd breached standards of care in the following ways, among others, to be identified through discovery: unholstering his firearm before he even saw Ashli, and therefore before, quote, any expected, prudent, and lawful discharge, unquote, while leaving his position in the retiring room and advancing and moving to the doors of the speaker's lobby; failing to maintain his unholstered weapon at low ready, and instead pointing his firearm at no fewer than 3 people on the other side of the lobby doors and in the direction of Ashli, and as many as 7 uniformed officers positioned near her in the hallway, and holding his finger inside the trigger guard and tapping his finger on and off the trigger for at least 14 seconds before he saw and shot Ashli. So, not a good shooting, and and that's a nice way of saying he killed her unlawfully. But it was a homicide, and it was an unlawful shooting. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just awful, and it's shameful that our government hasn't taken responsibility for it, both in terms of holding Byrd accountable and holding itself accountable through the processes available. And then on top of that, there were 3 police officers who were present on the other side of the door. So you think of the door being closed. Ashli and some of the other demonstrators are on one side of the door, Byrd's on the other side. Well, there are 3 police officers on Ashli's side of the door who were standing in front of the doorway, who then left. And after they stepped aside, other demonstrators started breaking into breaking the glass, and Ashli became agitated. She had law enforcement background. It's clear to the video, at least to my eye, that she was upset by what was going on. She was requesting that the officers do something, and obviously seconds later she was shot. And when you watch the videos, you'll see other officers right behind. So Ashli gets, she's up in the window. Byrd shoots at her like that. She falls back, and there are officers immediately behind her as she shot, who could have been killed also by Byrd if the shot had gone awry further beyond Ashli. And the officer who immediately is next to Ashli and closest to the door aims his weapon, clearly ready to shoot, because he didn't know where the bullet was coming from. So the tragedy could have been even worse if that officer had shot to defend himself and others, based on this crazed shooting by Byrd. And so the lawsuit alleges that those officers shouldn't have left their posts like that. And now Judicial Watch has been front and center in investigating not only the Babbitt issue. We uncovered that Byrd was given special sweetheart treatment and allowed to stay at Andrews Air Force Base for a long period of time at taxpayer expense, that he didn't give any official statement to investigators. He didn't talk. He refused to talk. He was given a special dispensation to kind of go through a walkthrough with an unofficial statement. So they did no serious investigation, nothing similar to the other investigations. We've all, if you're a citizen who keeps up with the news, you know generally what happens when there's a police shooting where there's an issue about, right? There are grand juries impaneled, there are a series of investigative steps that take place, and there's no indication any of that took place with respect to Byrd, because, as I would suggest, it was a political operation that stepped up after Ashli Babbitt's shooting, and that meant she wasn't going to get justice. So pretty much everything we know about the Babbitt shooting is as a result of Judicial Watch's litigation to date through FOIA. Now, obviously, we're going to gain more information. We disclosed it through the allegations in the complaint that is I would believe to be educational and newsworthy, and obviously useful for proving our case on behalf of the Babbitt estate and Aaron in court. But you can be sure that as this case proceeds, if it's allowed to proceed, because you never know what the court's going to do, we'll get more information through discovery, as we discussed earlier, that we're going to find out more about what happened around that shooting death. So when it comes to the full story on January 6th, you can trust Judicial Watch. You can't trust Congress. I mean, that January 6th report is an abomination. The Rump committee set up by Pelosi that involved no participation by the Republican Party. Yes, I know she appointed Republicans, but they weren't representing the Republican Party. They were there at her sufferance, and the Republican leadership had no role in that investigation, as is typically in congressional investigations. And of course, we now know, or I shouldn't say we now know, it's obvious January 6th has been used to justify trying to jail Trump, trying to take Trump off the ballot, the one-party state approach. That's what the left wants now, by the way, a one-party state. That when you go to vote in November, they want only one candidate on the ballot. I don't even think they do that in Russia. I think they have candidates in Russia that they allow on the ballot. They harass the heck out of them. I mean, but this is the revolutionary state we're in, where the left is revolting against the very idea of free and fair elections, and is rushing America towards a one-party state by trying to keep Trump off the ballot based on what happened on January 6th. And so the story that Ashli Babbitt was improperly killed by a police officer doesn't help that cause, doesn't it? And that's why she hasn't gotten justice to date. So we're going to pursue this $30 million lawsuit for Ashli Babbitt. If you like what Judicial Watch is doing here, I encourage you to support our work. You can go to judicialwatch.org, donate to our cause. You not only help with the lawsuit for Ashli's estate and Aaron Babbitt, her widower, but all of our other important litigation that we're pursuing, and our educational activities, such as what you're hearing now. We can only do it with your voluntary support. And along those lines, another lawsuit we were able to file because of your voluntary support is an important lawsuit against the Biden censorship agency called the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, I think it's called. I hate these acronyms. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. I call it CISA. And it's a sub-agency of the Department of Homeland Security. So it was set up under the Trump administration, mistakenly in my view, to deal with foreign interference in our elections. So it was a panicked response by people who should know better to the fake allegations and overstated concerns about foreign interference in our elections, which were not substantial, and certainly in the case of Trump weren't even real, as the left alleged. And so sure enough, this left-wing controlled agency, by all accounts, started targeting American citizens as opposed to Russians and the Chinese and whoever else is supposedly trying to interfere with our elections. And as House investigators have found, as Judicial Watch has found, CISA was coordinating with third parties in the academic sphere. You know, the same higher education community that gave you Claudine Gay gave you the censorship infrastructure. And guess who the target was? Conservatives. These are ideologues and partisans who hate their political opponents, and everything they do in the academy is geared at undermining them and suppressing them. And in this case, it was the censorship of Americans with the help of the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. The House Judiciary Committee released a report a few months ago in November detailing how the Department of Homeland Security, the CISA, and the Global Engagement Center, which is an entity over at the State Department. So, the question is, which agencies weren't censoring Americans? Coordinated with Stanford University and other entities to create the Election Integrity Partnership to censor American speech in the lead up to the 2020 election. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton, that's me, is listed as a target of this censorship operation. So I'm on one of their target lists. And I show up repeatedly in the target list. I love the left online. They say that Tom Fitton is listed by left-wing groups as one of the chief purveyors of, quote, misinformation. And it's like they're promoting the fact that they're targeting Americans for censorship because they disagree with material I post. And they take credit for it, and I'm supposed to be ashamed that I'm number 3 or 4 on their target. I mean, we're on their enemies list, and they're promoting it. I mean, that's how anti-American they are and anti-constitutional they are. And of course, we ask for documents under law for what's going on here. Give us documents about Judicial Watch and me. And they can't give them to us, or they won't give them to us. Now, how many documents could they possibly have? I don't know, maybe they've got thousands of pages. I'm being naive. But why are they hiding records on the censorship of Judicial Watch and me? And yes, it's happened repeatedly. We've been censored. Not only through this targeting under CISA, the California Secretary of State, working with the Biden campaign, it looks like, was targeting Americans for censorship. And I know at least one of the emails they sent asked them to take a YouTube video of Judicial Watch's concerns about election integrity down shortly before the 2020 election. And YouTube did it. And YouTube's repeatedly censored us. And I've been censored over COVID information. Judicial Watch gets censored over all sorts of reasons. And I'll say it again, YouTube, because I mentioned January 6th, is going to have some ridiculous warning directing you to Wikipedia, a left-wing rag of a website, for the truth about January 6th. So not only do they censor us, but they vandalize our material and suggest there's something wrong with it by pushing people to places where the left-wing narrative is verified and promulgated and propagandized. So we have multiple lawsuits on this censorship operation. Again, this new lawsuit over the targeting specifically of Judicial Watch. And I tell you, if Judicial Watch is targeted, if I am targeted, it means you are targeted. Because if you follow Judicial Watch and me online and our material is not able to reach you, and you, in other ways, would want to see it, you're being censored too. So we'll see what happens here We've got this other litigation ongoing against California over the censorship I talked about earlier. And if you haven't seen it already, I encourage you to look at Censored and Controlled, Judicial Watch's 4-part documentary that talks about the censorship industrial complex, describes it as it relates to COVID, elections, election interference. Remember, they censored Americans to help Joe Biden get elected by censoring the Hunter Biden laptop. So that's a great documentary if you haven't seen it. It came out late last year, and it's available for free on the internet, and you can see a link to it below. It's on our YouTube channel, on Rumble and Twitter and everywhere else. So I encourage you to watch that, and when we get documents about what they've been targeting Judicial Watch over, I'll be sure to release that to you. Also, in terms of the updates on the attacks on Trump and the cover-up of Biden, the latest as we go into the next week is that, first of all, the Supreme Court has just announced, I think it just announced, that they are going to take up the challenge that that Trump has issued against the coup, the judicial coup in Colorado, to take him off the ballot. And I guess there's a similar challenge in Maine. I don't think that's before the Supreme Court yet. And the petition for writ is granted. The case is set for oral argument on Thursday, February 8th, 2024. So that's about almost exactly a month away. So that's going to be a quick turnaround time. But they're trying to interfere in the election. As I said, this is an effort for a one-party state, and the Supreme Court hopefully will shut this down and clarify that Americans have a right to vote for the candidate of their choice without unlawful interference and election rigging by judges and partisans, in this case partisan Democrats, the Secretary of State of Maine, who also engaged in my view, insurrection to try to upend our elections by keeping Trump off the ballot there, or attempting to. Plus, on top of everything else, Hunter still is in, or will be shortly, in contempt of Congress. The House Judiciary Committee announced that it next week will continue its investigations of Hunter, in the sense that they will consider a report for contempt of Congress. As you may recall, after conniving and colluding and conspiring with Joe, Hunter refused to follow and abide by a congressional subpoena to be deposed. And so he thinks he's above the law in that regard. And you can bet that Congress, if they file a referral for contempt, it probably won't go much of anywhere with the Justice Department. I mean, it doesn't mean they shouldn't do it. But they should, as I have highlighted, they should exercise or consider the exercise of other powers they have, which include arresting individuals who are in contempt of Congress in order to cure the contempt. I mean, typically what happens is, the way it's supposed to work in theory, is someone goes in contempt of court, the court will put you in the pokey until you do what the court wants you to do, and get out of the contempt, purge the contempt by doing what the court orders. And it's Congress has that same power under the Constitution, and they used to exercise it. I think the last time they exercised it was in the 30s. Now they've outsourced it to the Justice Department, and obviously the Justice Department only applies their powers in that regard to prosecute contempts, usually in a partisan way. The deep state left targeted Bannon and Navarro, former Trump appointees, associates, for contempt of Congress. And do you think they're going to target Hunter? I don't think so. This is why the Congress should expand and escalate it by asserting its own ability to enforce the rule of law in this regard. And I just want to quickly comment on the border crisis. It's at historic highs. I know, every month we say it's at historic highs, but it's an invasion never seen before in the history of man. the largest transfer or migration or invasion of a sovereign nation in the history of the world, certainly in American history. I mean, the numbers are astonishing. They range, I see estimates of 6 to 10 million people illegally here. Only 5% are deported when they cross the border illegally. Everyone else gets, basically rubber stamped through. I mean, some of them don't even get checked, practically speaking, at all. And many of them use and make claims for asylum that the Biden administration pretends allows them to get a get-out-of-jail-free card here once they're across the border. I mean, they can enforce the asylum laws in a way that would require someone who seeks asylum to be detained. Or as Trump did, that you could seek asylum in Mexico, wait in Mexico until your claim's heard. And a bunch of Republicans, including the Speaker, were down on the border this week, bemoaning what Biden's been doing, aiding and abetting this invasion. And many of these same Republicans have fully funded this invasion of Biden's. I mean, there have been multiple opportunities over the last year to cut off federal funding for Biden's invasion. He uses your money to settle these illegal aliens. And they could curtail any policy they don't like by defunding it. And they refuse to do so. So, I mean, I think Biden should be impeached for what he's doing and all of that. But let's be clear, Congress has a role to play here, and you can't call it a crisis and then not do anything about it substantively. Either it's a crisis or not. And to say the Biden invasion is terrible and then just use it as a talking point, and you don't use the powers available to you under our system of government to try to stop it. All it is a fight to try to get leverage on the other side. I don't care. Republicans want to do that. I don't. No. That's not sufficient. But we can't wait. We got to stop it now. And over the next month, they're going to have funding fights where they could stop it. And I think you should be calling your members of Congress and folks in the Senate to tell them to defund Biden's border invasion. They can do it. They can do it tomorrow. Every time there's a government shutdown fight, you should know that's the point where they could say, if you want money to flow to the government, you stop the invasion. And they draw a red line, right? They could do that for the border invasion, for censorship, for the abuses of Trump. We're not going to fund the abuses of Trump, et cetera. I've talked about this. And if you agree, or maybe you don't agree, but share your views one way or the other with Congress at 202-225-3121. I think they're back in town next week after a 3-week vacation. Did you get a 3-week vacation for Christmas and New Year's? I don't think I got one, but Congress got one. 202-225-3121. Tell them to get to work because our republic's at stake. With that, I wish you a happy new year. Judicial Watch has began the year strongly, thanks to you. We've got this important Ashli Babbitt lawsuit, new lawsuits on censorship, coming up, lawsuits on election integrity. Everything you care about, Judicial Watch is either investigating or litigating. And so I try to keep you advised as to the work we're doing here. But again, as we begin the new year, I want to remind you we can't do any of it without your support. I encourage you to support our work. And if you're already supporting our work, thank you, and consider supporting us again. With that, I'll see you here next week on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.